Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, if you want to learn how to become financially independent, this is the episode for you. My friend Michael is changing the game of helping veterans get to where they need to be. And if you stay till the end, we're going to give you 3 things that you can start doing today to help become financially independent. The gentleman retired as a Brigadier General, one of the greatest men that I've had the privilege to know. He's an author. He's doing amazing things. And thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me, Richard. Great to be here with you and your audience.
It's my privilege, and I got to give a big shout out to Jessica. Without her, we wouldn't be set up today. We wouldn't be talking. So I want to give a big shout out and say thank you so much. So, sir, my first question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
Well, I think resiliency is the ability to, when something bad happens to you, whether it's small or huge, to be looking forward at the next success that you're going to go through and not always dwelling on the past, looking backward and being mired in the problems that you've got. And there's a lot of keys to being able to accomplish that.
I love it. So give us a quick down and dirty about where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you become the force that you are today?
Well, quick background. I grew up in California. Didn't know what I wanted to do and looked around at a bunch of different places. It turned out that you could go to the military academy without paying anything. And I thought, gee, that would be good. Had never been to New York, had never been to West Point. So graduated from the military academy in 1981. President Ronald Reagan handed me my diploma. And then I joined the Army as it was going through its rebuilding. The Army had gone through a depths in the 70s and was there as the Army was rebuilding, commanded an artillery battery in Germany. And at that point got married to my high school sweetheart, figured that I'd be in the Army for 5 years, but ended up staying for 32 years. And a lot of things turned around as it did with you and others after 9/11. I was teaching at the military academy at West Point on 9/11s, was down in New York City shortly after the Twin Towers fell, and then ended up deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan for about 32 months in various combat zones, including working with some of the other folks that you've interviewed. Worked very closely with General Dave Petraeus in Mosul, in Baghdad, and then over in Afghanistan. And in 2013, after 32 years where the only thing that I knew how to do was be in the Army, I had to find something different, wanted to work with a values-based organization that was near the military but not in the military, and so joined Armed Forces Mutual. We are the oldest nonprofit taking care of the military and veterans as a mutual association, and I've been doing that for the last 13 years.
So you've been deployed plenty of times. You've been Iraq, Afghanistan. You've been Bosnia. You've been everywhere. So you've laced up the boots, and you've known what it was like to sign your life away and having to sign that life insurance. So I think that we come from the same space but a lot of guys and girls that I've had on the show, and thank you once again for your service. And I had General Petraeus on. He was one of the first people that ever believed in me. So I want to give a big thank you to that gentleman. But a lot of us men and women, when we get out, we don't do 20 years. We don't do 30 years. We get out and we're broke, we're busted, and we're disgusted. And I think that's what we need to talk about today is, it's rare for a person to finish with, 20 or 30 years. I think people that get out with 4 years or 8 years is more the norm than the exception. Do you agree?
No, I think that's true. And in fact, So after you and I both left the military, they've developed this blended retirement system. We could talk a little bit about that, so that everybody who gets out, even if it's after 3 or 4 or 5 years, is taking with them some retirement savings that rolls into their 401k account and can be an important part to start that financial independence and security that all of us want, whether you're in the military for 4 years or in the military for 40 years.
And like I said, I was a ground pounder, so I was a tanker, and that's what I did. And a lot of people, we used to say, if you didn't have a divorce, if you didn't have a bankruptcy, then you didn't have a good military career. But I see that a lot of people, when they get out, we don't think it while we're in. We don't think about, oh, let's max out this, let's max out that, let's invest in this. A lot of E3s, E4s, you see them running through the front gate with a brand new car with a 30% interest rate. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
talk to us.
You wouldn't have so many payday loan places right outside military posts if there weren't people that get themselves into trouble and need to take advantage of those payday loans without realizing the exorbitant interest rates that they're paying. And so what we try to do with Armed Forces Mutual is not any different than what I tried to do when I was a battery commander, when I was a leader in the Army with all the soldiers that worked for me, is make sure that they kind of understand what's important, that they understand the value of the funds that they're getting. And we talk to them about 3 things. You got to protect what you've got. You've got to have effective savings and investing. And probably the first thing for everybody is to do effective budgeting. And that's important throughout your life, whether you're in the military or especially as you're transitioning out of the military. In my position, I happen to brief lots of people in the Army, and in fact, all general officers from the Army, admirals from the Navy, Marine Corps generals, as they transition out of the military. And it doesn't matter whether you're a specialist with 4 years in the Army or a general with 30 years in the Army, making sure that you're protecting your family and the resources you've got, you're doing effective savings and investing, you're doing effective budgeting, I think is really important.
So you're using the dirty word budgeting. A lot of people don't like the word budgeting, but I'm a big fan of Mr. Dave Ramsey. I've had him on the show. We've talked plenty of times. But all it is having a battle plan, putting your money to work. But a lot of people, they hear the word budget and it shuts them down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and you've got to have it. Again, a great military adage is that if you don't plan, if you're not planning, you're actually planning to fail. Failing to plan is planning to fail. And so with your budget, you are going to be spending money, and that makes sense. And you know that you're going to have expenses in the future. Being able to plot that out is actually very important. I think for service members today, frankly, the compensation for young soldiers, young Marines, sailors, is actually pretty good. Congress is doing well. Last year, there was a 15% increase for the most junior enlisted soldiers. They should be able to live within those means. And there are lots of tools, going to Armed Forces Mutual, going to our website, militaryonesource.com. The Army Community Services or the equivalent and other services are able to do budgeting. There is very few circumstances where you cannot live within the budget that you have. And tailoring your wants to be kind of short of what your consistent with what your budget is actually critically important and can set you up for the future.
And I agree. I also believe, like this year, I think it's the end of this month. There's going to be a 2.5% cost of living increase. So even if a person, says I can't afford anymore, well, you're just getting a bump So even if you just took that 2.5% that you're going to get that you didn't have before and start scrolling a little bit away, I think that would help instead of like having to put out one big chunk because that's money you didn't have before. Right?
Right. Think about, where you are in the military. Let me contrast somebody in the military with somebody who, like you as a podcaster. Somebody in the military is going to get a paycheck every single month, no matter what, no matter how hard they work, no matter how little they work, short of getting an Article 15 where your money gets taken away, you're going to get that money. And after 2 years, you're going to automatically get a raise in addition to cost of living allowance. When you get a promotion, you're going to automatically get a raise. And so that from private E1 that starts out to a specialist at the end of 4 years, or even a sergeant, if you get promoted quickly, you're going to get very substantial promotions so that your pay at 4 or 5 years is almost double the pay that you had as you came in. If all you did was save half of that pay increase and spend the other half to increase your standard of living, you would be saving more than the average American. And at the end, if you kept that for a whole military career, you would have literally close to or over $1 million, depending on what pay grade you're in. And that's just an important part of both compound interest, the discipline of savings, and being able to constrain what you want tied to the budget that is available to you.
And as you see, I'm writing stuff down because I do have a traumatic brain injury. So if I don't write it down, I'm going to forget. But I wrote in big letters, compound interest. And a lot of people don't realize the magic of compound interest. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And let me use the example of anybody who's in the military right now. They're part of the blended retirement system. So anybody, once you're in the military, will get an automatic 1% of your pay is paid in for free to you. If you save 5% of your money, the military is going to match that so that they end up saving 5%. So that literally is free money that goes in, 5% from you, 5% from the government. So 10% of whatever you're earning, and we'll make it real easy. Let's say you're earning $1,000 a month. $100 a month is going to go in there. That goes into what's known as the thrift savings plan, which is actually a very good mutual fund managed by the federal government. They've got a thrift savings board, has very, very small costs, literally pennies on the dollar compared with other much more expensive mutual funds. And you should have that invested in a relatively aggressive fund. There's a lot of different funds. The G fund is very, very conservative, just in government bonds. Well, shoot, if you're a 20-year-old and you're trying to think about retirement, that's 35, 40, 45 years from now. You can be in a relatively more aggressive fund so that you take advantage of all the stock earnings. The average return for stocks over a longer period of time is upwards 6, 7, 8%. If that $100 that you put away this month gets 8% this year, and then 8% next year, 8% the following year, 8% the following year, you'll double your money in only a number of 6 or 7 years, and double it again in another 6 years. And so that all of that money that you've saved will continue to compound. That's the concept of compound interest, what it's attributed to Albert Einstein. He described that as the eighth wonder of the world, because it really is how successful people do well going forward.
And I agree. But also, let's talk about, because when I talk to young people, especially if they're in military, whether they're military or not, I start talking to them about insurance, even at a very young age, because a lot of people that I know that are millionaires or billionaires, a lot of them are heavily invested in insurance, and that's one of their main vehicles for financial freedom as they got older. So let's talk about that when you're talking to an 18 or 19-year-old and you're talking about insurance.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge especially for those people that are in the military or recently got out of the military. Like I said, one of the principles is budgeting. We've talked about savings and investing as I just went through the TSP example. The third example is the third leg of the stool, so to speak, is protecting what you've got. Protecting what you've got means that with your biggest asset is a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old is your ability to work, the knowledge that you have in your head, and your ability to earn money over the next several years. If you've got a family, they are dependent upon you to be able to provide for them. If for some reason you have a disability, you can't work, or tragically, if you die, they will not only be emotionally destitute, but financially destitute as well. That's why when you join the military, they automatically sign you up for $500,000 of service members group life insurance. And that's a very good program. And if you're single and nobody's dependent upon you, that $500,000 is probably enough. On the other hand, once you get married, if your spouse is not working, and especially once you have children, you look at the cost of college education, look at the cost of raising a child, the $500,000 is probably not enough. And that's why there's organizations like Armed Forces Mutual and others. We are a mutual organization. It's a nonprofit that's been around since 1879, taking care of service members, where it's service members helping other service members. You can't contribute to us. We're not a charity in that regard. But what it is, it's service members providing insurance for other service members as a mutual association. And so you can go to armedforcesmutual.com and get the same kind of $500,000 of insurance that you have in the military as a supplement if you're married and have children, or especially when you leave the service, you lose SGLI when you leave the service, and you have to have some kind of insurance to be able to take care of your family. That's where a lot of people turn to Armed Forces Mutual, because it's essentially the same price and even better value because it sticks with you after you leave the service. And one of the things that we find is really important that our members appreciate is it includes survivor assistance services. This is something that's really critical because when you pass away, whether it's because of an accident in your 30s or 40s, or when you're 70 or 80 or 90 from natural causes, it's important that you have a team that comes in with your family to help make sure that you get not only your life insurance, your veterans benefits. The VA will pay a burial allowance. Social Security is going to pay you if you, in your case, have a military connected disability, and that contributes to your death. Our survivor assistance team helps your family ensure that they get dependent with it's called DIC, dependents indemnity compensation, so that your spouse can continue to get benefits even after you passed away if it's from a service connected condition. For families who are not familiar with this, that is probably even more important than the life insurance benefit itself, because they're able to take advantage of all of the programs that are out there and have a trusted guide that can talk to them through everything that their spouse has earned through their military service that protects them for the rest of their lives.
And I think that's probably the number one thing that would interest me, is because, a lot of, whether you're a widow or a widower, a lot of times you don't know where to go. You're just like, and there's no book, there's no pamphlet that tells you what to do when somebody passes away, or when somebody, say, is older and they need to get help as far as going into a facility. There's no playbook. So I think it would be great to have somebody that I could just reach out to and be like, Michael, I got questions. Who do you know that I can get in touch with?
No, and that's exactly what our people do. In fact, whether you get a life insurance policy from us or not, everybody should go to Armed Forces mutual.com or AAFMAA.com. For free, you can download our survivor assistance guide. Just put your email in there, download the guide. It's about 4 pages long. It has all the phone numbers for the VA, everything that you need. Obviously, we'd love to have you sign up and get an insurance policy from us, and then our people will guide you through that. But there's a heck of a lot of information on there. That way you can take advantage of everything. And whether you're 20 or whether you're 70, it's very valuable for you. If you've left what I tell people to do is print that out, even though everybody does everything on their phones nowadays. If you got a printer, print it out, fold it, and put it with your DD-214. That DD-214, your VA letter that has your disability rating, and the survivor assistance guide, those are the 3 things that your spouse is going to need when you pass away to make sure that he or she gets all the benefits that they are entitled to.
I love that. And I think that's some of the greatest advice I've ever heard, is just to make sure you have those 3 things somewhere where they know where it's at, so they can get it at any time. So I've had the authors of Rich Dad, Poor Dad on the show, and I just want to ask you your opinion. Is your house an asset or is it a liability?
In my view, I believe it's an asset, and different people can have different views on that. The important part from that house is you've got to think this through in terms of your planning of what size of a house do you want? How do you manage the payments for that house so that the payments are done? In my case, I was fortunate enough to be able to refinance it. I've got a 2.5% loan on that. I'm making a lot more money in the market with the stuff in there, although I'm paying that down so that at the point at which I stop working, I hopefully will have that house paid off and will be able to that's a resource that then can transfer to my children or whatever we end up doing with that. But it gets back to the planning part. When you're a young service member in the 20s or 30s, it's just planning to get to the end of the month. For people that I work with that are in their 40s or 50s, it's thinking about, hey, if I buy a house, have a 30-year mortgage on it at age 50, that's paid off at age 80. Do I want to pay that off more quickly? How do I want to manage all of those kinds of things so that you are appropriately financially independent and secure and never have to worry about the kinds of things that you might have to in retirement?
Yeah, and I agree, but I also think that, like, we bought our house, now it's 15 years ago. We bought our house for $300. Now it's worth almost $700. So it's kind of like, as you get older, and if you pay into these things, hopefully you start to have a little bit more options. Or say if you wanted to start a business, well, now you have an option that you can actually use some of the money that's in your house to start a business. So I believe my mother used to say that it's a poor rat that only has one hole, and I believe that as military people, we want to know what our options are. And I think the more you plan, the more options you're going to have in the future. Do you agree?
I do. And I think you've touched on another part that's important, and it really speaks to resiliency. You should never define yourself entirely based upon one aspect. In other words, you can be a great soldier, but if you fail as a soldier, that does not crush your life. You should not be so externally focused that if you don't get this promotion or that promotion, that's going to harm it. You've got your family, you've got your church, you've got your community. It may be the softball league that you're on. It may be the golf thing that you're doing. It may be the men's group that you're with. It certainly is the children and grandchildren that you happen to have that provide value and worth to your lives. And so when you're talking about vertical momentum and resiliency, the important thing is to have multiple different streams so that if something doesn't work out, you don't lull in being a victim that time. You figure out where you can be victorious in other aspects of your life. That could be in your home. That could be in your pickleball league. That could be in your small business that you get involved in. It could be in mentoring others. All of those things can give you worth and value to help you continue to look forward, even when all of us face the inevitable adversity that is just part of life.
And I appreciate that. Now, like I said, I've talked to Mr. Petraeus or General, and something that we talked about is how, military teaches us to go to war. They don't teach us to come home, but things are slowly starting to get better, as I see over the years. But, a lot of people like myself, after, 23 years, once I hung up the uniform, who am I? Who is Richard? A lot of us, we get hung up in the thing. We get hung up, like you said, we get hung up in what we do, and it's not who we are. So what do you say to these young soldiers that are going to get out of the military? Because they've got a lot of people getting out of the military every single day.
Right.
And they're gonna have to reinvent and reimagine their life. So what kind of advice do you give to those soldiers?
Yeah, the important thing is you put a lot of effort into being in the military. You don't realize all of the skills and all of the talents that you have, that you have acquired that you don't even recognize while you're in the military, that are of value when you leave the military. All of the people skills, all the leadership skills, all of the planning skills, all of the risk management and risk mitigation that is just built into you as a leader in the military, whether it's as a very young sergeant or as a more senior officer. Those things are things that in the workforce, you can't import that. When I work with all of the flag officers that are leaving the military, what they understand when they join civilian firms, you can learn about sales and management. You can learn about AI. You can learn about educational things. You can learn various aspects of accounting and skill yourself up in those things. The thing that most civilian employers are looking for is those kinds of people skills, leadership skills, communication skills, and dedication to getting a mission accomplished and solving problems. That's really what the military does. Whether you're a tanker or an infantryman or military intelligence or logistics, they're not hiring you for those specific skills that you did while you were in the military. They're hiring for those innate concepts that you have developed and practiced over a lifetime. So what I recommend to people is first network with others in the military and outside the military. Talk to the people that you know from all kinds of different environments. As you're preparing to leave the military, whether it's after 4 years or 40 years, start to network. It's the people that you run into at church and in civilian environments, talking to people who have also gotten out. Learn from them. It's lots of cups of coffee, lots of going out for a beer or a dinner with somebody, and both learn from them as well as then pay back when you're out there. Just like on this podcast, Richard, you've been a great inspiration for a lot of people who you don't even know who have learned from you. When you're out there having lunch or having coffee with somebody, teaching them and inspiring them and being a mentor to them, the number of emails and calls that I get from different people is, I think, very heartening, because it's a way in which we're able to kind of pay that forward and help other people as they transition and make our whole community, society, and the nation that much better off.
And I agree, and thank you so much. Something I tell, talking about networking, like I got an 18-year-old son, I got a 22-year-old son, and they've been on LinkedIn since they turned 18. I said, listen, right. if you want to learn how to network, if you want to start networking, LinkedIn is the place to be. And if you're a veteran, a lot of veterans don't know that you get a year of LinkedIn Premium,
a year of free LinkedIn.
And you can take as many college level courses. I think I took over 30 courses last year just on LinkedIn alone, on AI, on
Yep.
management, on sales. I took all these courses. It didn't cost me a penny. So talk about the power of LinkedIn, but also the power of networking.
No, I think that being able to network both individually, like I said, coffee, beer, that's more of my generation, but LinkedIn is exactly what your 18 and 22-year-olds are doing is critically important because that's where communications takes place. That's where you develop your brand and your reputation. And for a young person, what is your brand? What do you want to be known for? Again, not to use too much on LinkedIn, but if you look at the top there, you don't put, I haven't looked at yours lately, Richard, but you don't put there, hey, I'm a podcaster who does this, this, and the other thing. You talk about the leadership traits, you talk about self-motivated, you talk about those kinds of traits that are there. And then you look at other common people that do that. It's also very important, I caution your 18 and 22-year-old sons to be careful on what you're posting and what you're saying on LinkedIn, because once it's on the internet, it actually lives forever. And so you may not want to have the most brilliant, witty, provocative comment on Sydney Sweeney or something else like that, if that's going to be something that might hold you up in getting some future job at some point.
I love that, and that's something we always have to be aware, especially now with AI. You never know what's going to be out
Absolutely.
there. So if Private Joe Snuffy is just about to get out of the military, what would be your top three pieces of advice for him to start finding his way after getting out of the military?
Um, and again, because we're talking a little bit about finances, the try to, as you're leaving the military, start to save up so that you've got 4 to 6 months of income that you're going to be dependent upon. And that may mean finding a place as humble as it might be, moving in with somebody or going back to your parents or going somewhere so that you're not immediately taking the first job that is offered to you just because you're desperate to get that job. The second is continue to network. And if you can get involved in the Army Skill Bridge program or a DoD Skill Bridge program, that's a phenomenal program where you can take advantage of things. And in fact, for that young private, I would start early, not just taking courses on LinkedIn, but taking courses through the Army Education Center and through here. I happen to be in Northern Virginia. George Mason University has phenomenal certificate programs and those kinds of things so that you can try out. And as you said, you took a bunch of courses on AI. Is AI really the thing for me? Is that something where I have some competence? Or, well, I don't really do that stuff as well. Maybe it's in healthcare and I'm really passionate about healthcare or something else like that. So that ideally, before you leave the military, you've got a pretty good idea of not your entire path, but at least the next year or two of where you're going to be going. You've saved up some money. You're prepared to do that. And the final thing, just to plug Armed Forces Mutual, before you lose your SGLI, especially if you have a family, you definitely want to get some kind of Armed Forces Mutual insurance. We also, for anybody that's an E4 or above, include a career assistance program loan at 2.5%, give you $5,000 to get yourself started so that you don't have to take that first job that you're looking for.
So how do we get into your ecosystem? How do we get some help? Because I know that actually after we hang up, I'm going to be doing some research because I'm 56 years old and now I have assets, houses and cars and all that stuff. I want to make sure that my family's going to be taken care of. So how do we get in touch with you? How do we get in touch with the company?
Yeah, the very easy thing is go to armedforcesmutual.com, armedforcesmutual.com, and that'll resolve to AAFMAA, American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association. And on there is information about wealth management. There's information about budgeting. There's information, obviously, about insurance. survivor assistance services. And there's a transition guide, as you mentioned, whether that soldier getting out. We've got a 6-page military transition guide. Again, all of this is free to download, and it goes through kind of a 6-page checklist of everything that you have to go through, from getting your retirement physical to filing your VA disability to making sure that you have all those things. It's a great checklist that everybody has to go through the week-long transition assistance program, but that's kind of running from a fire hose. This is the top level things that you need to think about for transitioning. And so that's what I would recommend. Or if you just Google Mike Meese, Meese, you'll find out information about me. That'll pop up on Armed Forces Mutual as well, as a great way to learn more about us and become well-informed so that you can set yourself up for your own financial independence and security.
Now, you also authored a couple books, correct?
I did both the Armed Forces Guide to Personal Financial Planning. That was when I was the director of the economics program at West Point. I taught a bunch of cadets up at West Point about that. And then subsequently have authored the book American National Security, which is really the single best kind of textbook that covers the entire world, from everything from economic, military, political aspects to a walk around the world about every different region. It's a little bit of a thick book, 600 pages, all on international relations and political science. So not exactly the kind of bedtime reading that you'd want. But if you have any, but it's a great thing for national security experts.
And where would we find your books?
Those are all available through Amazon, and you should be able to get it there. But again, that's got a select sort of audience. It's probably not as broadly popular as a Dave Ramsey book or something like that your folks would be interested in.
Well, sir, I just want to say thank you so much. I've learned a lot today, and some of the stuff I'm actually going to take and use in my own personal life. Because what good is it to learn all this stuff and not use any of it? And I'm also going to have my sons watch this, because they're not in the military, but they're young men. They're in college. So I'm going to have them listen to this episode. I want to give a big shout out to Jessica. Thank you so much for putting us together and helping us with tech stuff, since I'm a low-tech redneck. Thank you for helping us put this together. And I just want to say thank you, sir. And hopefully we can build a generational relationship from this point forward.
Absolutely, Richard. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all that you're doing, reaching out and getting the word out to the military veterans and everybody out there in the community. I think if we all continue to work together, it'll continue to help all of us progress and the whole nation move forward.
I love it. And guys, as you know, every day I end my show, and like you talked about, every morning we wake up, we can be a victim or we can be a victor. And if you're a listener of this show, you're no longer a victim of your past. You're a victor of your present and your future. Thank you guys for always showing up. I love you guys. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Michael, my friend, have an awesome week. Keep kicking butt.
Thanks, Richard. Have a great day. Bye-bye.